at the ancient site of Qumran. It is here where one of the greatest archaeological finds were discovered, the Dead Sea Scrolls. This was a collection of 981 different manuscripts from 11 caves.
During a routine scan of the Dead Sea Scroll cliffs, researchers detected a hollow space deep inside the rock. No map showed it. No earlier survey had even hinted at it. When archaeologists broke through the wall and looked inside, the mood in the tunnel changed instantly. Several stepped back without a word. One refused to enter at all. Many turned away from the opening and vowed never to return. Whatever the chamber was meant to hide, it was clear that someone had sealed it for a reason. The mountain that refused to give up its secrets. For most of the 20th century, archaeologists believed Qumran had already told its story. The major finds had been taken out of the cliffs. Early excavation teams described the terrain in confident detail. They claimed that every opening wide enough to hide a scroll jar had been entered, mapped and cleared. In their view, the desert had already surrendered everything important. When later researchers returned to the site, they accepted this conclusion without much debate.
In 1986, we enter a cave west of Jericho. And in this cave, first of all, we found 6 documents from the Bar-Kokhba period, 1 document which is earlier from the Persian period in the same cave.
Academic reports described Qumran as a completed project. Many scholars argued that anything still buried in the cliffs would be too small or too damaged to influence history. Senior archaeologists even discouraged younger teams from spending time there, insisting the scroll caves were a solved mystery with no discoveries left to make. Yet the Judean desert has a reputation that makes people uneasy. According to several field reports, this landscape hides cracks and hollows where no one expects them. Rockfalls change the shape of cliffs. Openings that were once visible can vanish behind fresh debris. Local guides sometimes speak of places where goats disappear into the stone and do not return. None of this is proof of secret chambers, but it is enough to remind researchers that deserts do not give up their secrets easily. A new expedition decided to test the old assumptions. Instead of walking the cliff face with ropes and lanterns like their predecessors, they brought equipment that did not exist in the early scroll years. The goal was not to find new scroll fragments. The goal was to search for empty spaces inside the rock itself. The team rolled out compact ground scanners, tablet screens, and drone controllers. They planned to let machines look where human eyes could not. The drones lifted off and traced slow paths across the limestone walls. The scanners measured changes in density and sent back layered images of the rock. At first, everything matched the old maps: solid cliff, known caves, a few shallow pockets, nothing unusual. On the second and third flight, the data changed. Shapes appeared that did not line up with any documented openings. One technician suspected a glitch and restarted the system, but the shapes returned. The outlines were faint, yet regular enough to unsettle the team. Some believed they were seeing early signs of a deeper feature that earlier surveys could not detect. Others argued that the scan was misreading the rock. Frustration grew as the shapes sharpened instead of disappearing. When the team adjusted the sensors again, the blurry forms merged into one clear outline. It did not resemble a crack or erosion pocket. It looked contained. The idea that a sealed cavity had been sitting inside a familiar cliff for more than 70 years brought a mix of disbelief and rising excitement. If this void was real, then the long-accepted story of Qumran had never been complete. And the deeper the scans went, the clearer it became that the mountain was hiding more than a hollow space. The strange anomaly no map could explain. The first real shock came when one of the researchers zoomed in on the scan and saw a shape that did not belong inside a natural cliff. The void was tucked behind the wall of a known cave, hidden inside the thickness of the limestone. What caught everyone's attention was its symmetry. According to geological reports, natural hollows inside desert cliffs usually form uneven pockets, but this outline was almost perfectly oval. Even the skeptics on the team admitted that nature rarely produces such clean curves in solid rock. The shape demanded a second look. When they examined it more closely, the void began to resemble a chamber. The outer edge of the scan suggested that an entrance may have existed long ago. It appeared to be blocked by a thick sheet of limestone that had fused with the original cliff. This fusion hinted that the blockage might not be natural. Some of the researchers believed this could indicate deliberate sealing, although they stressed that this was speculation. Still, the more they studied the image, the more it looked like a constructed space rather than an accidental cavity. The location of the chamber raised even more questions. It did not fit the pattern of ancient storage rooms found at other scroll sites. It did not line up with erosion paths that shaped natural openings. It did not resemble the layout of known hideouts from the Roman period. One by one, the researchers compared it to every category they could think of. Each explanation failed. Nothing documented in previous excavations matched what they were seeing. In an attempt to confirm the anomaly, the team pulled up ground imaging from the 1970s. Those older scans showed nothing at all in that part of the cliff. The absence was expected because the earlier equipment lacked the sensitivity of modern sensors. Still, it demonstrated that whatever they were looking at had remained invisible for decades. One engineer suggested that a fracture line in the rock could have hidden the void completely from older technology. This possibility made the feature feel even more intentional. The situation became more unsettling when they examined the area surrounding the chamber. A narrow crawl space lay a short distance away, partly filled with stone fragments and dust. According to unverified reports, the shape of the crawl space suggested that someone had attempted to reach the chamber long ago. The angle of the tunnel looked rushed and uneven, as if the person digging it had been working under pressure or fear. What the team found beside it supported this idea. Scattered on the ground were shards of pottery, part of a broken tool handle, and a single Roman era nail. The objects did not appear arranged or stored. They looked dropped. They looked abandoned. Some members of the team believed these belonged to whoever had tried to enter the chamber in the past and stopped suddenly for reasons no one could yet explain. The discovery brought a noticeable tension into the camp. This was no longer just an interesting scan. It was evidence of a failed attempt to reach something hidden. These clues shifted the entire mission. The anomaly was no longer a minor curiosity inside the rock. It had become a mystery that challenged everything the team thought they understood about the cliffs surrounding Qumran. With the mystery now undeniable, the team had no choice but to attempt a descent that few would dare, and that decision led them straight toward the first signs of real danger. The descent into the cliff and the first signs of trouble. The team prepared ropes, harnesses, and anchors with careful precision, fully aware that any mistake could be dangerous. Several members reported that the winds at that height changed direction without warning, and small stones regularly loosened and slid past them. The location felt unstable from the very beginning, and the team understood that reaching the chamber would not be simple. The descent began at a controlled pace. Each researcher moved carefully, checking the ropes before shifting their weight. Some parts of the cliff were unstable, and the team quickly realized that the rock was softer than expected. Thin plates of limestone broke away with very little pressure, which created immediate safety concerns. To prevent the ledge from giving way, the climbers had to install stronger anchors deeper into the rock. Every strike of the drill reminded them how fragile the surface was, and how easily the situation could turn dangerous. When they finally reached the narrow ledge outside the anomaly, they realized it was worse than they expected. The ledge was so thin that only one person could stand on it at a time. Even a simple shift in weight caused small stones to crumble off the edge. The team rotated positions carefully. The atmosphere became tense. According to later accounts, no one spoke unless absolutely necessary. From the ledge, the anomaly was only a few feet away. Dust coated the surface of the stone wall, so the researchers began to scrape it away with brushes and small tools. As the debris came off, faint markings appeared. They were shallow cuts arranged in straight rows. The patterns resembled tool marks seen in the original scroll caves. This was the first sign that the wall in front of them may have been worked by human hands. A small hairline crack ran along the edge of the stone surface. It looked unnatural. One archaeologist described it as a place where someone had once tried to pry the entrance open. When the team widened the crack slightly, a gust of hot air rushed out. It was dry and stale, as though the chamber had been closed for centuries. Mixed with the heat was a faint scent that caught the attention of the most experienced member of the group. It was the smell of old fabric and dried soil, a smell that field teams often associate with ancient burial spaces. This changed everything. What they were touching was not part of the natural cliff. It was a constructed chamber. Someone had shaped the wall by hand and then sealed it behind a layer of solid limestone. The team exchanged a quick look. They understood that whatever waited behind the barrier had been hidden with intention. The discussion about whether to open it did not last long. The wall had already shown signs of weakness, and the opening crack proved that there was a space behind it. They positioned their tools along the widest point of the fracture and worked in short, controlled strikes. Each hit caused a small vibration through the ledge. One member warned that the rock around them was too fragile, but the group continued. They needed to see what was inside. After several careful blows, a deep split ran across the surface. The next strike widened the opening enough for light to slip through. With the ledge trembling under their feet, they widened the gap until they created a narrow entry. When the final piece loosened and fell inward, a dark hollow appeared before them. The chamber was open, and with the wall no longer blocking the view, the team was finally ready to step inside. The orderly room that should not exist. The first moments inside the chamber caught everyone off guard. After the difficult descent and the struggle to break through the sealed wall, the team expected to find a collapsed cavity or a chaotic pile of broken objects. Instead, they stepped into a room that looked carefully arranged. Nothing appeared scattered. Nothing looked disturbed. It felt as if someone had stepped out only a short time earlier, even though the air inside suggested it had been closed for many centuries. The most striking sight was the rows of clay jars standing near the entrance. There were dozens of them, all identical in size and shape. They were arranged in clean, straight lines, the sort of precision that does not happen by accident. Some members of the team said it reminded them of a storeroom prepared by someone who needed everything in a predictable place. Others felt uneasy because the order was too perfect for a chamber hidden so deep inside a cliff. Each jar was sealed with layers of linen that had been soaked in resin until the surface became almost stone-like. According to early impressions, this sealing style suggested that the jars were meant to protect something sensitive from moisture, insects, and oxygen. In the center of the room sat a large woven basket. Its size alone made it stand out. It reached almost to a person's waist and was crafted with unusual precision. The weave pattern was tight and complex. Several researchers pointed out that the technique looked older than anything from the Roman period. Mineral deposits found on the lid hinted that the basket had been sealed long before the chamber itself was closed. This raised an important question. Why would an object from a much earlier era be placed alongside Roman period jars inside the same room? The floor added another layer of confusion. A thin layer of dust covered the ground, smooth and undisturbed. The only marks were the fresh prints made by the team. This meant the chamber had remained untouched for a very long time. Nothing inside suggested recent activity. The silence of the place, combined with the deliberate arrangement of the jars, gave the room an unsettling calm. It did not feel like storage left behind in a hurry. It felt controlled. As the team examined the arrangement more closely, opinions began to differ. Some researchers believed the layout resembled a ritual space. They pointed to the central basket and the straight rows as signs of ceremonial preparation. Others believed the room had served as an emergency deposit for people hiding valuables or important supplies during periods of danger. Both theories were speculative, but neither could explain why items from different time periods were preserved together in one chamber. That contradiction bothered everyone. It suggested purpose, but the purpose remained unclear. No one could agree on who had used the chamber or why they had cared so much about its order. The only certainty was that the space had been prepared with intention. Someone had come here, arranged these objects and sealed the entrance, expecting the room to remain hidden. Yet even with everything laid out so neatly, the chamber was holding something back, and the first hint of it appeared in a place they almost overlooked. Scrolls that should have never been buried. The first sign that the chamber held more than jars appeared along the back wall. As the team brushed away dust and loose stone, one researcher noticed a shallow recess cut into the rock. It was not a natural pocket. The edges were straight with clear tool marks. Inside that recess lay 3 compact bundles placed side by side. At first, they looked like simple cloth packages. Then the team noticed the shapes beneath the wrappings. Each bundle had a firm cylindrical core. The outlines were too regular to be random. These were scrolls. They had not been stored inside jars like most of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here there was only cloth, wrapped in several layers and hardened by age. Freeing them from the recess took time. The outer fabric was stiff and rough. According to early notes, samples taken from the surface contained mineral salts, likely added to keep out insects and moisture. That detail matched preservation ideas known from Qumran, but the folding pattern did not. Instead of basic bands around the outside, the cloth had been folded repeatedly over itself, sealing the cores from light and air. The binding style did not appear in any excavation report the team knew. Some of the cloth strips had been looped and tied in ways no one on site recognized. One bundle stood out. Around its center ran a length of fiber knotted in an unfamiliar pattern. Several scholars later observed that this type of knot did not show up in Qumran material. That detail raised quiet questions about who had tied it and whether the person belonged to the local community. Faint traces of soot stained parts of the cloth. Some archaeologists believed this suggested that the scrolls were wrapped or moved while smoke filled the air, possibly during attacks or nearby fires. This idea remained speculative, but it fit the way the bundles had been pushed deep into the carved recess, as if someone wanted them as far from danger as possible. When the team compared measurements and photographs with images of previously recovered Dead Sea Scrolls, they noticed familiar features in the size and curvature of the bundles. According to one internal review, certain details resembled a set of writings mentioned in early catalog notes but never recovered. Those notes referred to texts that had vanished during the first wave of discoveries in the mid-20th century. When they examined the cloth more carefully, they found faint traces of ink that had seeped through the outer layer. That allowed the team to reconstruct pieces of what the scrolls once contained. One fragment appeared to match a line from a known apocalyptic text. "There will be a time when darkness will cover the land. The sons of light shall rise, and the sons of darkness shall fall." A second fragment seemed connected to a rare narrative about ancient beings. The team noted the visible words. Their dreams were filled with visions of blood and destruction. A third set of markings resembled a warning from a legal document. Judgment will come upon them, for their deeds are hidden no longer. No one understood why these particular lines were buried together, or why they were sealed in cloth rather than stored in jars. Some members of the team speculated that the scrolls came from a larger library removed in haste before Roman troops arrived. Others suggested that the writers believed these messages were too dangerous to leave in plain sight. Whatever the intention, one fact became clear. Someone had gone to extraordinary effort to keep these texts protected and hidden inside a chamber that almost no one would ever reach. Still, nothing inside the recess prepared them for what waited in the last corner of the chamber. That was where the tone of the entire discovery changed. The dark corner. No one wanted to approach. The far corner of the chamber was the only area the team had not examined closely during the first sweep. The lights barely reached it, and the ground there looked different from the rest of the floor. It dipped slightly and held more dust than the surrounding space, almost as if something had been resting there for a very long time. At first, no one paid much attention to it, but once the main items had been documented, one of the researchers suggested they check the corner properly before leaving the chamber. When they brought their lamps closer, the change in soil became impossible to ignore. The ground was darker and compacted, shaped in a way that did not match the untouched sections of the room. It looked deliberate. A thin crust of dust covered the surface. The team used small brushes to clear it, and as the upper layer shifted away, a curved bone pushed through the soil. It was pale against the dark earth. Every movement in the chamber stopped. As they cleared more of the soil, the shape below took form. The outline of a child's body appeared. The remains belonged to someone no older than 7 to 10. The position of the bones made several members step back. The child was lying face down. The hands were pulled tightly behind the back, crossed and bound with a narrow metal wire. The wire had aged into a brittle green color, but its purpose was clear. It had been used to hold the child in place. The discovery changed the mood in the chamber immediately. One archaeologist stepped away and refused to continue. Another whispered that this could not be a normal burial. Several bones showed marks that did not match natural decomposition. Some members believed these marks might indicate trauma, although this was not confirmed. The possibility alone created a tense silence among the group. The most disturbing detail came when they inspected the skull. A small stone was lodged inside the child's mouth. It had been placed there intentionally. Some researchers suggested it could signify a ritual from an unknown community. Others believed it might point to punishment or an attempt to silence the child in death. These ideas remained speculative, but every interpretation carried the same weight. This was not gentle treatment. It was not a respectful burial. Whatever happened here involved fear, urgency, or an attempt to control something the living did not understand. The team tried to make sense of the scene. If the jars and scrolls represented preservation and order, then this corner represented something completely different. It felt like a warning. It felt like a message, left by people whose intentions were no longer clear. The discovery affected the team in different ways. One member refused to re-enter the chamber for the rest of the day. Another insisted that they document the remains quickly and leave the space entirely. According to later accounts, several researchers argued that they should stop the excavation until authorities were notified. Once they understood what they were looking at, the room no longer felt like a site to explore. It became a decision the team was not ready to face. The decision no one wanted to make. Once every object inside the chamber had been photographed, measured, and logged, the energy in the room shifted. The thrill of discovery faded, and a heavier question took its place. The team now had to decide what to do with a space that held both sacred artifacts and a disturbing burial. It was no longer just an archaeological site. It was evidence, memory, and possible crime scene all in one place. The first voices in the discussion argued for a full excavation. They believed everything inside should be removed at once and taken to controlled environments. According to some of them, the chamber was too unstable to leave open. The cliff face had already shown signs of weakness. Any new rockfall could crush the jars, the scrolls, and the remains before they were properly studied. Others pushed back. They warned that clearing the chamber completely would strip it of its context. To them, the way the objects were arranged was as important as the objects themselves. They also raised an ethical concern. The restrained child was not just data. That discovery involved an unknown person whose story was now tied to every decision they made. Rushing to empty the chamber felt, to them, like a second erasure. The presence of the child's bones forced the team to involve people outside archaeology. Legal authorities were contacted. Cultural and religious representatives were informed. According to later reports, some of these advisors insisted that any future work had to respect both scientific needs and the dignity of the dead. After long debate, a compromise was reached. The chamber would be resealed temporarily. Access would be restricted until a larger committee decided how to proceed. Monitoring equipment was placed near the new seal to record movement and to ensure that no one entered without permission. In the end, everyone agreed on one point. The chamber raised more questions than answers. The jars, the scroll bundles, the ancient basket, and the dark burial did not belong to the same era or even the same community. The conflicting timelines suggested that different groups had used this hidden space for different reasons, and that at least one group had hidden something that others never meant to uncover. If this was only one hidden chamber in the Qumran cliffs, what else is still sealed inside the desert? Tell us what you think in the comments.